Alright, we're back and now we're looking at section 6.2 and 6.3, just the key points with parallelograms. That's the word for the day in your book. These are from sections 391 to 397. Quick example of what's going on here. We see RSP is equal to 99 degrees, PQ is 19.8, RT is 12.3, and it says to find PT. Well, the general idea is that as we look at some of this, we know that some things are equal. So for example, with a parallelogram, diagonals bisect each other. What does that mean? That means that this piece equals this piece, and this piece equals this piece. That's exactly what it means. So PT and RT are congruent. Therefore, if RT equals 12.3, to find PT, we just say it's the same as R3. So PT is 12.3. What else do we know? If PQ is 19.8 over here, so is this side, 19.8. And if RSP, which would be this angle down here, is 99 degrees, so is this one, PQR. We have a lot of congruency of opposite angles, opposite sides, and almost opposite halves of the diagonal, if you want to think of it like that. But the general idea that was used, diagonals bisect each other. So let's try some of these examples. It says measure of angle ABC is 79 degrees. So right here, this whole thing, that's going to be 79 degrees. And for BC, that is 62.4. So this side is 62.4. BD, the whole diagonal is 75. So we're going to keep that in mind as well. If I want to find BE, that's half of this diagonal, because notice that it's split in halves again. So BE and ED equals BD. And BD we know is 75, so if we split it in half, we get BE and ED individually. So 75 over 2 would be, just to show you guys that, 2 goes in here 3 times. 2 goes into 15 7.5 times. So we have 37.5. Now if I'm looking for AD, that's this side, in a parallelogram we know that opposite sides are congruent. So this side would also be 62.4. Well, let's keep going. ED. We already did this because BE and ED are the same thing. So it's going to be 37.5 again. This one right here, by the way, was 62.4. CDA, CDA, that would be this angle down here. We know that 79 degrees is angle ABC. So the opposite angle, CDA, is also going to be 79 degrees because opposite angles are congruent. These last two are where we start having to do a little bit more math in our calculations. To find BCD, I know that ABC, this angle in here, and BCD are parts of they come from a pair of parallel lines cut by a transversal. Whenever you have that, and you have these consecutive angles, those consecutive angles are same side interior angles of parallel lines. Therefore, you can make them supplementary. You actually not make them supplementary, they are supplementary. So if this is 79, that means whatever BCD is, that needs to add up to 180. So 79 plus something equals 180. If I subtract 79 from both sides, I get that that angle measure of angle BCD equals 101. So this right here, this angle is 101. Now DAB, that's the opposite of that angle. So that's also 101. I don't have to do the calculation again because I know that opposite angles are congruent. So take a second if you need to pause the video, but I'm going to keep going. More parallelograms. So now we have some variables and algebra mixed in here. Not only do we have to use the numbers to do calculations, we got to be able to do them with algebra as well. So let's take a look at this first one. If I were to try and find LK, looking for LK, which would be this side, which is y plus 7, I notice that that's opposite JM, and JM and LK are the same things. So if we know that segments are congruent, then we can make them equal to each other. So then I can substitute in here 2y minus 9 and y plus 7. The JM is 2y minus 9, the y plus 7 is the LK. And then after I solve that, it doesn't show all the steps to solve them, but I'm going to show you guys real quick. 2y minus 9, I would have moved this negative 9 over to the other side and subtracted this y back to this side. That gives me y equals 16. Y equals 16, but it doesn't tell me what JM or KL are. I need to actually put that back in. So no matter which one I put it into, it should get 23. This equals 23 for KL or LK. And so does this one. It's also going to be 23. Why? Because both opposite sides are congruent to the other opposite side. Let's talk about the angles now. We have this consecutive angles. A parallelogram consecutive angles are supplementary. So this x plus 4 and the 3x are going to add up to 180. If I were to solve that by regrouping and getting 4x plus 4 equals 180. Then I subtract 4, divide by 4, I get x equals 44 degrees. But that's not the question they're asking. They're saying find each measure. So I got to plug it back in. So I plug it back into this one here. And I know that this is going to be 132. And when I look at the other angle, MJK, that x plus 4, it's going to be 44 plus 4. So this one is 48 degrees. Let's use this information, start trying to apply it over to this parallelogram. So I see that WX and YZ are opposite each other. How does that help me? Because those two are equal. So let's solve them. B plus 6 equals 5B minus 8. If I subtract B from both sides, add 8 to both sides, I get 14 equals 4B. Now when I put that together and divide, that's going to be B equals 3.5. So the question then is, it's saying, how do I find the measure of each side? Well, this would be 3.5 plus 6 for WX. 3.5 plus 6. That's 9.5. Without even having to do calculations, I know that YZ is the same, so I would get 9.5 for that as well. Now when I look at the angles, angle W and angle X, trying to put those together, I need to know what A is. So I need to know the relationship between these two angles. Well, I know that 6A and 14A are consecutive angles, and because consecutive angles are supplementary, I can add those together and make them equal 180. So 6A plus 14A equals 180. In total, that means 20A equals 180. 20 goes into 180. How many times would that be? 4 plus 5, so A equals 9. It kind of looks like a 9 too. Then I have to figure out each of these angles individually. So W, that's going to be 6 times 9, which is 54. For X, that's going to be 14 times 9, which is 131. Now the cool thing about these last two here, Y and Z, Y is the same as W, so that's just 54 degrees. And Z is the same as X, because opposite angles are congruent, so that's 131. I hope 131. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. That should be 136. Pardon me. Oh, I'm off. I knew I was off somehow. Those should be 136. 136 for x and z. X and z are 136. Now it's correct.